Hello class 7 students, welcome back to the history class. Today we are going to start chapter 9 of our history book, which is Struggle for Political Supremacy. Learning objectives. Sources for the 18th century, foreign invasions, the rise of regional powers, the later Mughals, reasons of the decline of the Mughal Empire. Let's warm up. Given below is a picture of Sindhudurg fort built by Shivaji. A. It is called the finest sea fort. Can you give the reason behind it? B. Can this fort become a major tourist attraction? C. Can you state the main aim to build this fort? Application skills. Under the British rule, the Congress leaders argued that political education was an important part of education and refused to accept the official view that education and politics should not be mixed with each another. But when they came to power in 1947, they almost adopted the British policy and began to talk of education being defiled by politics. Hands-off education was the call of political parties. But in spite of it, political infiltration into the educational system has greatly increased in the sense that different political parties vie with each other to capture the minds of teachers and students. The wise academicians wanted political support without political interference. What we have actually received is infinite political interference with little genuine political support. Thus, interference with the educational system by political parties for their own ulterior motives is no political education at all. And with the all-round growth of elitism, it is hardly a matter for surprise that real political education within the school system, which really means the creation of a commitment to social transformation, has been even weaker than in the pre-independence period. Now answer the following questions. A. What did the Congress leaders argue about the political education? B. What was the result of political infiltration in the educational system? C. What have we actually received? D. What is hardly a matter of surprise? Answer these questions with the help of your teachers and parents. Sources for the 18th century. 18th century was an eventful period in Indian history. The map of the country was reshaping. The most powerful empire of medieval India, that is Mughal Empire, which came into being in the early 16th century and had achieved great excellence in all aspects of politics and culture, was on a decline. The forces of disintegration had set in during the reign of Aurangzeb. This is the map showing extent of empire under Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb's Deccan policy had a disastrous effect on the economy of the Mughal territory. The many chiefs and feudatories to the Mughal court started asserting their independence by carving out their independent kingdoms when the central authority of the Mughals collapsed. The most prominent among these were Hyderabad, Awadh and Bengal. The English East India Company took advantage of the political fragmentation and instability following the declines of the Mughals. In fact, we will see how these two factors actually facilitate the territorial expansion of the company. The period also marked the end of the medieval period and the beginning of the modern age, as the changes that occurred were not only political but also social and economic in nature. There was also a perceived change in the mindset of the people. The later Mughals. You know that Aurangzeb spent last 25 years of his life fighting wars in the Deccan. During that long period, unrest broke out in other parts of the empire. In Punjab, the Sikhs began to assert their independence. In the Ganga-Yamuna Doab, peasant unrest became frequent. The Mughal army was kept busy marching from one part of the empire to the other to put down rebellions. Fact file: the later Mughals ruled the subcontinent for 150 years, 1707 to 1857. After the death of Aurangzeb in 1707 CE, his successors were unable to hold the Mughal Empire together. When Aurangzeb died, his three sons Bahadur Shah, Muhammad Azam and Kambaksh fought for the throne. Bahadur Shah defeated his brothers and ascended the throne in 1707 CE. He took the name of Shah Alam. However, he was already 65 when he became emperor. Shah Alam's reign saw the growing power of the Marathas and the Rajputs. The Sikhs revolted under their leader Banda Bahadur. Banda Bahadur was executed along with several of his followers. In 1712 CE, Shah Alam was deposed by Jahandar Shah. Jahandar Shah's reign saw the rise of the Sayyid brothers. The Sayyid brothers were part of a group of nobles who became so powerful that they were able to put the people of their choice on the Mughal throne and remove the ones who displeased them. Thus, they were also known as kingmakers. They killed Jahandar Shah within a year and placed Farrukh Shiar on the throne in 1713 CE. He was murdered in 1719 CE, and after a series of other rulers, Muhammad Shah, a grandson of Shah Alam, came to power. He ruled till his death in 1748 CE. Muhammad Shah was a pleasure-loving man who was unable to give the empire the strong leadership it needed to survive. This is the picture of Muhammad Shah. During his long rule, the Sayyid brothers were removed from power. However, Hyderabad, Awadh and Bengal broke away from Mughal control. By the end of the 17th century, the power of the central administration had weakened further. Merchants and feudal lords started taking greater control of trade. Increased wealth made them very powerful. They owned ships, controlled exports, maintained armies, and became self-made jagirdars. Foreign invasions. Nadir Shah, the ruler of Iran, plundered the city of Delhi in 1739 and carried away with him immense wealth, including the Kohinoor diamond and the jewel-studded peacock throne of Shah Jahan. A contemporary observed and described the wealth looted from Delhi as follows: 60 lakh of rupees and some thousand gold coins, nearly 1 crore worth of gold ware, nearly 50 crores worth of jewels, most of them unrevealed in the world, and the above included the peacock throne. Ahmad Shah Abdali invaded India 5 times between 1748 to 1761. His total plunder has been estimated at 70 crores at rupees 70 crores, which enabled him to exempt his own kingdom from taxation for 3 years. Before leaving Delhi after the Third Battle of Panipat in 1761, Ahmad Shah declared Shah Alam II as the emperor. This is the picture of Ahmad Shah Abdali. Reasons for the decline of Mughal Empire. The Mughal Empire began to decline during the reign of Aurangzeb. He did not show the same political skill or statesmanship of his predecessors, who had earlier involved various other groups in the task of governance. The Mughal Empire had also become too large to administer. Aurangzeb's policy of annexation created a lot of pressure in terms of the administration of the empire. Institutions like Mansabdari system lost their efficiency as the power of Mansabdars and Subedars grew unchecked. Revenue collection became uneven as the center could not assess a large part of the revenue from the province. The invasion of the Deccan drained the financial resources of the Mughal treasury. Aurangzeb's rigid policies and actions made the Rajputs, the Jats, the Sikhs and the Marathas revolt against the Mughals. Hence, during the last years of his rule, uprising by the Jats, constant wars with the Sikhs and the peasant rebellion shattered the stability of the Mughal Empire. Aurangzeb's successors were weak and could never emulate the accomplishments of their predecessors. In the loop, the first Lok Sabha elections were contested for the 489 seats. The number of constituencies was increased to 543 in 1977. The rise of regional powers. The Sikhs were downtrodden by the Mughals. They rose up in Punjab by the end of Aurangzeb's rule. The 10th of the last Guru of the Sikh, Guru Gobind Singh, transformed them into a warrior community. He founded the Panth, cult of Khalsa, pure, or the Brotherhood of Sikhs. This is the picture of Guru Gobind Singh, which gave the community a sense of unity. The political and military power of the Sikhs grew remarkably after the formation of the Khalsa. By the time Guru Gobind Singh passed away in 1708, the Sikhs had become quite strong. The Sikhs issued coins by striking the names of Guru Nanak and Guru Gobind Singh. They established their own administration. When the successor of Aurangzeb tried to bring them under control, they revolted. Banda Bahadur led the first Sikh revolt. He was captured in 1715 and put to death in 1716 in Delhi. For a long time after the death of Banda Bahadur, the Sikhs remained a community divided into several groups and without any able leader. During the last decades of the 18th century, Ranjit Singh, the courageous leader of one of the clans of Sikhs, brought them together again. This is the picture of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. He took the title of Maharaja and established his capital in Lahore in 1799. Under his great leadership, the Sikhs were soon able to form an independent kingdom, Rajputana. The Rajputs rulers did not lag behind in consolidating their position by taking advantage of decline of the Mughal Empire. They participated in the struggle for power of Delhi and gained governorship from the Mughal Empire. This is the picture of Jai Singh II. Jai Singh II of Jaipur was appointed the governor of Surat. Ajit Singh became the governor of Ajmer and Gujarat. These two governors held their kingdom in full sovereignty. Awadh. Awadh was a prosperous region as it controlled the Ganga plains and was on the trade route between Bengal and the north. Burhan-ul-Mulk Sadat Khan was appointed as the governor of Awadh by the Mughal emperor. Later he founded the autonomous state of Awadh. Sadat Khan exercised political, subedari, military, faujdari and the financial diwani powers himself. He tried to reduce the influence of the Mughals in Awadh by reducing the number of office holders. He appointed officials who were loyal to him as Jagirdars and reduced the size of Jagirs. Their accounts were regularly checked. Awadh was also made use of revenue farmers called Ijaradars to assess and collect revenue. Revenue farmers were given the freedom in the assessment and collection of taxes which had never happened before. He was summoned to Delhi at the time of Nadir Shah's invasion. Sadat Khan seized a number of Rajput zamindars and agriculturally fertile lands of the Afghans of Rohilkhand, Bengal. Murshid Quli Khan was appointed as Naib, deputy to the governor. He made use of the period of confusion after Aurangzeb's death to seize power and became the governor of the province. By combining the offices of Nizam and Diwan, he controlled the administration, revenue and military. Like governors of Awadh, he was concerned with increasing his revenue. For this, he sent all Mughal appointed zamindars to Odisha before their lands were reassessed. He also made the big zamindars responsible for revenue collection, thus eliminating the smaller zamindars. By these measures, he ensured emergence of the powerful commercial class of moneylenders and influential political class of zamindars. He also established dynastic rule by naming his grandson his successor. After bloody succession coup, his son-in-law Shahajuddin Muhammad Khan became the next governor of Bengal. He followed the policies of Murshid Quli and maintained the appearance of allegiance with Delhi by sending it tributes. Alivardi Khan further emphasized autonomy by sending irregular tributes and revenue to the Mughal emperor. He appointed many of his loyalists to important posts without informing Delhi. He also reinforced the army and made it strong and well armed. By the end of Alivardi's rule, Bengal was an independent state in eastern India. Hyderabad. The founder of the independent state of Hyderabad was Nizamul Mulk Asaf Jahan. He had served under different Mughal emperors and had proved his worth. Asaf Jahan had been the governor of the 6 Mughal Subas of Deccan and was given the title of Khan, Khana. He had crushed the power of the nobles at Delhi. He strengthened his position in the Deccan by capturing forts of Asirgarh and Burhanpur. The Mughal Emperor Muhammad Shah appointed him Wazir of the Mughal Empire in 1722. But since he did not have a free hand in the administration, he finally came to Deccan to maintain supremacy and led the foundation of independent Hyderabad state. By the time of his death in 1748, he had been able to establish efficient administration and revenue system. His successors came to be known as Nizams of Hyderabad. Mysore. Mysore became a powerful kingdom under Hyder Ali. He started his career as a foot soldier and gradually rose to become the ruler of Mysore in 1761. As a ruler, he controlled the rebellious zamindars and improved the condition of the peasants. He also modernized his army with the help of the French. This is the picture of Hyder Ali. He established a modern arsenal at Dindigul in 1769. He defeated the British in the First Anglo-Mysore War. He died in 1782. Hyder Ali was succeeded by his son Tipu Sultan. He was known as the Tiger of Mysore. Tipu was deeply influenced by the ideas of the French Revolution. He introduced modern weapons in his army and made an effort to build a modern navy. This is the picture of Tipu Sultan. He also realized the importance of trade and industry and tried to introduce modern industries in India. He died fighting the British during the course of the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War, 1799. We shall read about it in the details in Book 8. The Jats. Close to Delhi, in the Mathura-Agra region, the Jat peasants under their leader Gokula rose in rebellion against the high taxes levied by the Mughal rulers. In 1619 CE, they built forts and blocked Karwas routes from Agra to Delhi. They killed the Faujdars who carried out the oppressive policies of Aurangzeb. One of their kings, Surajmal, established the kingdom of Bharatpur. This is the picture of Surajmal. However, they could not succeed against the might of the Mughals. Gokula was executed, but the Jats continued to trouble the Mughals for years. In 1691 CE, the rebels reappeared in greater force and captured Akbar's tomb. The Marathas. The Marathas belonged to the Marathwada region, which consisted of present-day Mumbai, Khandesh, Konkan, Berar, parts of Madhya Pradesh and Andhra Pradesh. Under the leadership of Shivaji, 1627 to 1680 CE. The Marathas rose to become a major threat to the Mughal Empire. Shivaji. Born in 1627 CE, Shivaji was the last 6 sons of the Shahji Bhosle, a powerful noble in the service of the Sultan of Bijapur. Shivaji's guru, Samarth Ramdas, was a Bhakti saint. He taught Shivaji to take pride in Maratha culture and to fight for freedom from the Mughal rule. Shivaji grew to be a great soldier and a strong leader. This is the picture of Shivaji. Fact file. Shivaji captured the Torna fort only at the age of 16. Establishment of power. Shivaji started on his mission of conquest when he was just 18 in 1644 to 45 CE. Within 11 years, he laid the foundation of the Maratha Empire by capturing the whole of the Konkan. He built a fort at Raigad and made his capital there. Taking full advantage of the rocky and mountainous terrain of western Maharashtra, Shivaji and his followers launched surprise attacks on their enemies. This kind of hidden warfare is called guerrilla warfare. The element of surprise gave the Marathas a great advantage over their enemies. Unlike the Mughals, who neglected the seaports, Shivaji built strong navy forts at Suvarnadurg and other places to protect his territory from attacks through the sea route. He also befriended the Europeans to learn modern techniques of warfare from them. Aurangzeb became the Mughal emperor in 1658 CE. Both he and the Sultan of Bijapur and the Mughals were alarmed at growing power of Shivaji. Attempts were made to curb him. In 1664 CE, Shivaji attacked the port of Surat and looted it of its wealth. He caused enough damage to paralyze trade in Gujarat and the entire Mughal Empire. After a Few conquests of Shivaji, Aurangzeb sent Jai Singh to fight with Shivaji. Jai Singh defeated him and imprisoned him, but he escaped and came back to Maharashtra. Shivaji crowned himself as Chhatrapati or sovereign ruler in Pune, now Pune. In 1674 CE, he overran the Deccan, capturing Ginji and Vellore in South India, and Kopal and Bellary below Kaveri in Karnataka. He died at Rajgarh in 1680 after ruling for only 6 years. In this short time, he founded the Maratha kingdom, which dominated western India for a century and a half. The Maratha administration. Shivaji was a capable administrator who had set up a centralized system of administration. The king was the head of the administration and was assisted by a council of 8 ministers called the Ashtapradhan. The Peshwa. This is the picture of painting showing a Maratha light horseman. Prime Minister was the head of civil and military affairs of the empire. The commander-in-chief of the army was the Senapati. Other officials included the Dabir, who was in charge of foreign policy, and the Chitnis or the secretary who dealt with the royal correspondence, that is, letters sent or received by the king. During the rule of Shivaji, the nobles and officers were chosen according to their merit. Over time, as the power of the king dwindled, the Peshwa became more powerful and this post became hereditary. The empire was divided into provinces. They were administered by Subedars and their deputies. The provinces were in turn divided into units called parganas and villages. The smallest unit of the empire was the village. The village headman was called the Patil. He performed administrative, revenue, and judicial functions. Since agriculture was the main occupation, land revenue formed the main source of income for the treasury. The territories were divided into two types: Swarajya or homeland, which was directly under the Marathas, and the Mughal lands, which were not under direct Maratha rule but accepted their authority. There were two main taxes: Levite, Chauth, and Sardeshmukhi. The Chauth was 1/4 of the yield of the territory, while Sardeshmukhi constituted 1/10 of the yield. These taxes were imposed on the Mughal lands. In the Swaraj lands, farmers paid 2/5 of the produce as tax. Agriculture was encouraged by the state. Religious policy. Shivaji was a devout Hindu. True to this upbringing, he treated the Muslims and their women with great respect. He had also great respect for Quran and employed a large number of Muslims in his army. His religious policy was therefore liberal. He even gave grants to the Muslims to build mosques. During his raids, the soldiers were under strict instructions not to harm mosque or any place of worship and women. This tolerant religious policy was one of the factors responsible for the rise of Marathas. Successors of Shivaji. The successors of Shivaji were weak. In the 18th century, power passed into the hands of Brahmin ministers called Peshwas. It was under them that the Marathas became the dominant power in India. Case study: the Peshwas. After the death of Shivaji in 1680, he was succeeded by his son Sambhaji, who was tortured to death by the Mughals in 1689. Later, his stepbrother Rajaram carried on the struggle against Mughal until his death in 1700. Tarabai, Rajaram's widow, a capable leader, became the regent for her minor son Shivaji II. In the meanwhile, Sahu, the son of Sambhaji, was released from Mughal prison. He captured the throne from Tarabai. Sahu was made the Maratha king in 1713 and he appointed Balaji as his Peshwa or prime minister. Soon, under his capable leadership, Peshwa became a very dominant figure in Maratha Empire. After Balaji's death, the position and the title of Peshwa became hereditary, and 6 other Peshwas ruled on powers until 1818. The Peshwas ruled on behalf of Marathas. It was during the rule of these Peshwas that Maratha Empire saw its greatest extent. During the rule of second Peshwa, Bajirao I, a union of Maratha chiefs called Maratha Confederacy was formed. The members of Confederacy were Bhosle, Nagpur region, Gaikwad in Baroda-Ahmedabad region, Sindhia, Gwalior region, and Holkar, Indore region. The Peshwa was the head of Maratha Confederacy. It also included most Rajput territories like Malwa. Due to certain inherent weaknesses like lack of national perspective, absence of a common defense policy, lack of unity and support by other kingdoms and groups, the Marathas could not contain the fledgling British imperialism. Third Battle of Panipat, 1761. The growth of Marathas made the Jats and the Sikhs and the rulers of Bengal and Hyderabad anxious. So when the Marathas clashed with Ahmad Shah Abdali in the Third Battle of Panipat in 1761, none of them came to the Maratha rescue. As a result, they were completely routed. The various Marathas chiefs began to rule over their own areas. This paved the way for the East India Company to gain ground in India. This picture is depicting Third Battle of Panipat 1761. Value and life skills. As we know, war causes both short-term and long-term damage for both the winner and the loser. The economics of both the participants are severely affected because all trade and exchanges are distracted for the war efforts. Imports and exports suffer very much. Recapitulation. Some of the later Mughals were Bahadur Shah I, Jahandar Shah, Farrukh Shiar, and Muhammad Shah. Regional kingdoms became powerful in the 18th century. Some of these kingdoms were Punjab, Rajputana, Awadh, Bengal, Hyderabad, and Mysore. The Marathas emerged as a powerful force in the second half of the 17th century. Shivaji was a powerful leader. He captured numerous territories and challenged the authority of Aurangzeb. He was a capable administrator. He reformed the revenue and military administration. Balaji Vishwanath took advantage of the weakness of the later Mughals to extend the boundaries of the Maratha kingdom. Thank you, class. Let's meet again next time.